Hey there, wherever you are right now, maybe at home, on a long drive, or just scrolling through your phone, let me introduce myself. I'm Nathaniel Hayes, a 45-year-old architect from New York City. For over 20 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage, a loving wife, and a stable life. But as it turns out, I was living in a lie. One night, I walked into a hotel room expecting answers, but found my wife tangled up with her boss instead. That moment shattered everything. And trust me, the drama didn't stop there. Lies, manipulation, even an attempted crime to erase me. She was willing to go further than I ever imagined. But life has a way of balancing things out. What started as the darkest chapter of my life led me to something completely unexpected. New love, a tangled family dynamic, and a second chance at happiness. So tell me, where are you listening from? What are you doing right now? Drop a comment below so we can get to know each other. And now, sit back and let's dive into a story that proves karma never misses its mark.
I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. You read about it in books, hear about it in whispered gossip, see it in tragic movies where the faithful husband gets blindsided. But when it happens to you, when the knife slides between your ribs from the hands of the person you trusted most, the pain isn't poetic. It's raw, searing, and all-consuming. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights at the office, the hushed phone calls in the next room, the sudden, almost desperate need to look perfect before leaving the house. Laura was always beautiful, but there was something different about her lately, an energy, a glow. And it wasn't for me. Still, I told myself I was overthinking, that the stress of work was making me paranoid, that 20 years of marriage meant something, until the night my world came crashing down. It started with a text, one careless message that popped up on her phone while she was in the shower. I wasn't the type to snoop, but the preview was right there on the screen, taunting me. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same room." My blood turned to ice. I stared at the words, feeling my heart hammer in my chest. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was meeting a friend. Maybe... No, everything inside me screamed the truth. I had to know for sure. That night, she kissed me goodbye, the same way she always did, as if nothing had changed, as if she wasn't about to go meet another man. I forced a smile, told her to have a good time, and then, the moment she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys and followed. She drove to a hotel. Not some shady roadside motel, but an upscale one, the kind meant for business meetings or romantic getaways. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I waited, watched, and then I saw him. Dominic Reed, her boss. The man I had shaken hands with, spoken to at company events. The man who had looked me in the eyes while secretly screwing my wife. They met in the lobby, a brief exchange of words before they headed to the elevators. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to act, but I forced myself to wait. If I was going to confront them, I wanted there to be no doubt. I followed them up, keeping my distance, my pulse pounding in my ears. The hallway stretched endlessly before me as I approached the door they disappeared behind. Room 706. I stood outside, staring at the numbers, listening to the muffled sounds inside. My breathing was ragged, my fists clenched. Then, without thinking, without hesitation, I grabbed the handle and shoved the door open. The scene inside hit me like a sledgehammer. Laura was beneath him, her head thrown back, tangled in sheets that weren't ours. The air was thick with heat, with the scent of them, with the moans she used to make for me. And then, chaos. She gasped, eyes wide with horror as she scrambled to cover herself. Dominic practically fell off the bed, his face draining of color. "What the hell?" he shouted, grabbing for his clothes. But I wasn't looking at him. My eyes were locked on her. My wife. The woman who had vowed to love me, to be faithful, to stand by my side. The woman who had just shattered my entire world. "Nathaniel," she stammered, her voice shaking. I can explain." "Explain?" My voice was eerily calm, but my hands trembled. "Go on then, Laura. Explain. Tell me how this is just a misunderstanding." She opened her mouth, but no words came. What excuse could possibly undo what I had just seen? What lie could rewrite the truth burned into my mind? Dominic had the audacity to step forward, hands raised as if to pacify me. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." "Shut the hell up," I snapped, my voice razor sharp. "You don't get to talk." I turned back to Laura, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw it. Guilt, fear, and beneath it all, something worse. Regret. Not because she had hurt me, but because she had been caught. I felt sick. I stepped back, the weight of it all pressing down on me. "I loved you," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "I gave you everything." Tears welled in her eyes. "Nathaniel, please." But I was already walking away. As I reached the door, I paused, gripping the frame so hard I thought it might break. Without looking back, I said the words that sealed our fate. "We're done." And then I left, letting the door swing shut behind me, cutting off the sound of her sobs. The night air was cold when I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. My heart was numb. My mind was a whirlwind. Everything I thought I knew about my life had just been ripped away. But this was only the beginning, to be continued. I don't remember driving home that night. The city lights blurred past me, neon streaks against the windshield, but I barely saw them. My mind was stuck in that goddamn hotel room, replaying the scene over and over like a cruel joke. Laura beneath him, her body moving in ways I thought were meant for me. Her lips parted, her breathless gasps, sounds that once made me feel alive, now twisting into knives in my chest. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. My breath came in ragged bursts, my vision edged with red. My entire body felt like it was burning, an inferno of rage, humiliation, and heartbreak swallowing me whole. How could she? How could she look me in the eye every day, kiss me goodnight, tell me she loved me while sneaking off to be with him? The moment I reached home, I slammed the car door so hard the sound echoed through the quiet street. The house stood in front of me, dark and empty, mocking me. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a fucking tomb, filled with memories that now felt like lies. I stepped inside, my hands shaking as I flicked on the lights. The framed photos on the hallway wall stared back at me. Our wedding day, vacations, holidays where I had believed we were happy. I grabbed the nearest one, our anniversary picture from just last year, and hurled it across the room. The glass shattered on impact, shards scattering across the floor like the remnants of my marriage. My chest heaved. I wanted to destroy everything, to erase every trace of her. Instead, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The silence of the house was deafening, pressing in on me from all sides. Then my phone rang. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was her. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. When it finally stopped, a notification popped up. Voicemail. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the play button. A sick part of me wanted to hear what excuse she would come up with, what pathetic lie she would spin. I hit play. "Nathaniel, please, please pick up." Her voice came through, frantic, shaking. I know you're hurt. I know what you saw, but you don't understand. It's not..." A choked sob. "Please, just come home. Let's talk." Talk? Talk about what? How she had been fucking her boss behind my back? How long had it been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. A few hours later, she walked through the door. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy, as if she had been crying. Good. Let her cry. Let her feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. "Nathaniel," she whispered, taking a cautious step toward me. I stood up, leveling her with a glare so cold she stopped in her tracks. "Why?" My voice was low, dangerous. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Why, Laura?" I repeated, my fists clenching. Was I not enough? Did I not love you enough? Provide enough? Were you just fucking bored? Tears slid down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. No? Then tell me, how was it? Help me understand how my wife ended up in bed with another man. She swallowed hard, guilt flashing across her face. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me? My voice rose, my rage boiling over. You've been screwing him behind my back for who knows how long, lying to my face every single day, and you never meant to hurt me? I was lost, she sobbed. I don't know what happened, Save it. I cut her off, my voice like ice. I don't want your excuses. I don't want your apologies. I want you out. Her eyes widened in shock. Nathaniel, please. Get out, I snarled. Pack your shit and leave. Now. She stared at me, as if waiting for me to take it back. As if waiting for the man who had loved her unconditionally to suddenly forgive her. That man was dead. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs. I heard her sobs, the sound of her hurried footsteps as she scrambled to gather her things. The front door slammed shut behind her, leaving only silence. For the first time in 20 years, I was alone. The next few weeks were a blur. Lawyers, divorce papers, endless nights of drinking, trying to drown the ache in my chest. I slept with women I barely remembered, chased distractions that never worked. Nothing could erase the betrayal. Then, one night, I came home to something far worse. The house smelled like smoke. My pulse spiked. I ran inside, my stomach twisting. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood, and in the dim light, I saw it. Ash near the staircase, scorch marks on the rug, the faintest trace of a fire that had somehow, miraculously, died out before it could consume everything. And then, the realization hit me like a freight train. Laura. The thought slammed into my skull with sickening certainty. Who else had a reason to burn my house down? Who else had that kind of rage, that kind of desperation? I called the police. The investigation started, but there was no solid evidence. Nothing to tie her directly to it. She got away with it. Just like she had gotten away with breaking my heart. But I knew. I knew the woman I once loved had tried to destroy me. Not just emotionally, but physically. That night, as I sat in the remnants of my nearly ruined home, something in me shifted. The pain was still there, burning deep, but now it had turned into something else. A vow. Laura would face the consequences of her actions. One way or another, karma was coming for her, and I would be there to watch. To be continued. I never thought I'd love again. After Laura, after the betrayal, the fire, the divorce, I convinced myself that love was nothing more than an illusion, a beautifully wrapped lie waiting to shatter the moment you let your guard down. So I didn't. I built my walls high, filled my nights with distractions, and let the bitterness settle in my bones. It worked for a while, until Rachel. I met her the night Oliver introduced me to his fiancée, Olivia. It was supposed to be a simple dinner, a formality before the wedding planning truly began. I wasn't expecting much, certainly not expecting the woman sitting across from me at the table to make me feel something again. Rachel was Olivia's mother, recently divorced, like me, strong, composed, but with a quiet sadness behind her eyes that I recognized all too well. She smiled politely, engaged in small talk, but there was something about the way she carried herself that caught my attention. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't playing a role. She was just real. And I hadn't been around something real in a long time. The dinner started off normal enough. Conversations about the wedding, the guest list, the venue. But then, somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, Rachel and I found ourselves lost in our own conversation. She asked about my work, genuinely interested, not just making conversation. I told her about architecture, about the buildings I had designed, about how I used to love my job before my life fell apart. And then, without meaning to, I told her about Laura. I expected pity, maybe discomfort, but instead, she just listened. Really listened. When I finished, she didn't offer the usual cliches. Time heals all wounds, or you'll find someone new. She just nodded and said, "That kind of betrayal changes you." I exhaled, a weight lifting from my chest. "Yeah, it does." A pause. Then, softer, she said, "Mine wasn't as dramatic as yours, but it still broke me." I looked at her, really looked at her. "You're divorced?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. 2 years now. My husband left me for his assistant. Cliché, I know. Something twisted inside me. I knew that kind of pain. The slow unraveling of trust. The realization that the person you loved had already left long before they physically walked away. We sat in silence for a moment, understanding passing between us in a way words never could. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. After that night, Rachel and I kept running into each other. Wedding planning meetings, family dinners, events that forced us into the same space. At first, it was easy to pretend it was coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. I started looking forward to seeing her. It was in the little things, her dry sense of humor, the way she rolled her eyes when Olivia and Oliver bickered over wedding details, the way she always knew when I needed a moment of quiet. She was calm where I was restless, steady where I was still trying to find my footing. And yet, every time I felt myself getting closer, I pulled away. Because love, real love, led to vulnerability. And I wasn't sure I could survive another betrayal. One evening, after another long wedding discussion that left Olivia in tears over floral arrangements, Rachel and I found ourselves alone on the balcony. The city stretched out before us, golden lights flickering in the distance. "You look like you're thinking too much," she said, leaning against the railing beside me. I huffed a quiet laugh. "I think that's just my default setting." She smiled, but there was something knowing in her eyes. "You don't trust this, do you?" I turned to her, surprised. "Trust what?" "Whatever this is," she said, gesturing between us. "You feel it. I know you do, but you're still running from it." I clenched my jaw, looking away. "I'm not running." "You are," she said softly. "And I get it. But Nathaniel, not everyone is Laura." Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I stared out at the skyline, my chest tightening. "I don't know how to do this again," I admitted. "You don't have to," she said. "You just have to let it happen." I turned to look at her then, really look at her, and for the first time in years, I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that love didn't always end in betrayal, that maybe, just maybe, I could trust someone again. The thought terrified me, but for the first time it didn't send me running. Rachel held my gaze, a silent challenge in her eyes, and slowly, cautiously, I reached out, my fingers brushing against hers on the railing. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. This wasn't love, not yet, but it was something, a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to see where it led, to be continued. I never thought I'd see the day when I could look back at my past and not feel the weight of it pressing down on my chest. For so long, Laura's betrayal had defined me. It had shaped the way I saw love, trust, even myself. I had spent months trapped in my own anger, my own bitterness, convinced that I would never escape it. But here I was, standing at the altar, watching the woman I once thought would be the love of my life take a seat in the back row. Alone. And I felt nothing for her. Rachel stood beside me, radiant, confident, the kind of steady presence I had once thought I'd never find again. Today wasn't just about our wedding. It was about a second chance at happiness, for both of us. But before I got to this moment, before I could say I do again, I had to face the final ghost of my past. A week before the wedding, I got a message from Laura. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time, my jaw tightening. I didn't owe her anything. I had moved on. I was happy. But some part of me, the part that had spent 20 years loving her, knew that this conversation had to happen. Not for her, for me. So I agreed. We met at a small cafe, neutral ground. When I walked in, she was already there, fidgeting with her coffee cup. She looked different, tired, older somehow, like the weight of her own mistakes had finally caught up to her. "Nathaniel," she breathed, as if she was relieved I had actually shown up. I sat across from her, folding my hands on the table. "What do you want, Laura?" She winced at my tone, but didn't shy away. "I heard about the wedding." Of course she had. The world was small, especially when you didn't want it to be. I nodded. "Yeah." She looked down at her coffee, exhaling shakily. I needed to see you, one last time." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She bit her lip, hesitating. "Because I need to tell you the truth." I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "The truth?" "Laura, I walked in on the truth. I lived the truth. What could you possibly tell me now that would change anything?" Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw something real in them. Not manipulation, not excuses, just regret. "I ruined us," she whispered. "I know that. And I know that no amount of apologies will fix what I did to you. But I need you to know, it wasn't because you weren't enough." Something inside me twisted. For so long, I blamed myself. I admitted, my voice quiet. I kept wondering what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. But the truth is, you made a choice, and that choice destroyed everything. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I know. I should have felt satisfaction seeing her like this, knowing that she finally understood the depth of what she had done. But all I felt was exhaustion. "I'm marrying Rachel," I said, watching her reaction carefully. She gave a sad smile. "I know. And she's good for you. I can see it." I exhaled slowly. "Then this is it, Laura. This is the last time we do this. I can't carry this anymore." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I hope you find the happiness I took from you." For the first time, I believed she meant it. I stood up, hesitated for just a second, then turned and walked away. And with each step, the weight I had been carrying for so long started to fade. The day of the wedding was perfect. Oliver stood beside me, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. "Nervous?" he asked, smirking. I glanced at the guests, at the life I had built after everything fell apart, and shook my head. No. For the first time in a long time, I'm not. Then the music started. Rachel walked down the aisle, her dress flowing behind her, a soft smile on her lips. And when she reached me, when she took my hands in hers, I knew this was where I was always meant to be. We said our vows, not just to love each other, but to build something real, something unshakable. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," I did, pouring every bit of my past, my pain, and my hope for the future into that moment. I had been broken. I had been betrayed. But I had survived. And I had found love again, not despite my past, but because I had finally let it go. Laura was in the past. Rachel was my future. And I was finally free. And that, my friends, is the story of how betrayal nearly destroyed me. But in the end, it set me free. Looking back, I realized that pain, as unbearable as it was, wasn't the end of my story. It was a turning point. It forced me to see the truth, to let go of the past, and to find a love that was real. Life has a way of breaking us down, but it also gives us the chance to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and with people who truly deserve us. So tell me, what did you think of this journey? Have you ever been betrayed? Have you ever found love when you least expected it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk. Let's share. Because stories like this aren't just mine. They belong to all of us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. There's always more to tell, more lessons to learn, and more emotions to explore. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling this story with me. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care. And remember, karma never misses its mark.